All right, so tonight we're going to be doing Module 5, User Environment and Configuration. And here's your one-page mind map on it. Also go over Module 5 Configuration. So tonight we're going to be doing User Environment. We're going to start with Shell Configuration. And basically we'll work at the terminal first, and then we'll go back over and we'll do it through the GUI. All right, so the first thing is basically the command prompt. All right, so use and modify the shell environment, including defining, referencing, and exploring or exporting environmental variables. So we'll jump over here and we'll go right into it. So the first piece of this is the standard bash variables. So you can change all of these if you like. When you log back into a system by default, there's all of these preloaded variables. So like, what is your default shell? What editors do you have? If there's any environmental variables, any home directories, your log paths, where do you send your mail to, and things like that. Also, we're going to look at how to set and view the different environmental variables. So I have, things like the set command and the env command. And I'll show you how you can use, echo whatever the variable is. Basically, it just means, print it. So, to get an idea here, just type in echo, $, home. And also, while I'm at it, let me go ahead and make that a little bigger. Is that a little bit easier for you guys to read? So echo home, echo $ printer, all right? Echo $ PS1, right? And so you get to see the different variables that are set. So that's the easiest ways to viewing them, just simply using your echo command. And again, you can echo $ whatever your variable name is, and here's a list of all of the variables. So if you want to see what mail is, if it's defined, there you go. Echo $ path, echo $ hist file. All right, there's where we keep your history. Echo $ log name. All right. So basically it's just going through them and knowing what the standard variables are and then how to check them. And then you, of course, like if you don't get anything back, like on one of these Echo printer, I don't have any printers set at the moment because I don't have anything installed in the VMware, so it doesn't think that I have a printer, so you don't get anything in response. But if you do have something, then you'll be able to look at that. So next, let's look at set and the env command. So let's go back. All right, so let's look at the manual for set. All right, change a runtime parameter. So you can see set the session, if it's with another computer or if it's with your own local computer, any of the configuration parameters, and then you can set them equal to, and then whatever the value or the value name is, and they give you some different examples of that. So the set command changes runtime configuration parameters, many of the runtime parameters listed in Chapter 18. That's according to this documentation, not mine. In the server configuration and the documentation, that can be changed on the fly with set. But some require super user privileges, so you may get prompted. You might have to do a su or a sudo prior to actually using these. All right, basically defines what a session is, local, and then all of the values and things like that. Okay. Also, let's do a manual for the environmental variable. Run a program in a modified environment. This is definitely one that you're going to need to know. Okay, so it's the env, whatever your options are, and then the values. So set each name to a value in in the environment and run the command. And of course, we'll look at things like I, and when we get to the actual documentation, I'll give you the examples of exactly what to type for that. All right. So there's a quick manual for each one of those. All right. Next, changing variables. Okay. You can basically do a customized command prompt. I'm going to show you that, and that's easier for me to show you in the actual module by module as opposed to the mind map. All right, but basically it's whatever the variable is equal to single quote, whatever you want it to be, and then single quote again. So that's the basic format. Whatever the variable name is equal to something in single quotes. Like my var is equal, Linux is cool, and then echo my var. So you can easily create that. So my var is equal to Linux is cool. And you definitely want to use the single quotes if there's a space. Or I'm just going to do my MVA, and then echo $MYVA. Linux is cool. And that's how you basically store something and then call upon it. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But you will need to know the correct syntax for that. You also can undo a variable, so remove the variable. Export, okay, you can export variables. Okay. There's the path variable, all right? So like user local bin, et cetera, games, sbin, user, right? So let's do a echo $path, all right? What was I thinking? Well, I wanted to show you one that has more directory references to it. Apparently path isn't set specifically. Let's try env. No. Actually, it was probably because of capitals. There you go. That's much better. Just typo. All right, so you can see, so here, look, learn from your mistakes, right? So echo was in all lowercase. Notice it said, I should have actually just read the error message that said, path not found. And then I should have caught myself a little quicker, but echo space $path, and here's their paths that are set. So you should compare these to what's in the mind map. So for example, let's scroll down here again. User local sbin. Okay, user local sbin. Next one, user local bin. User local bin. All right, user bin. User bin. As you can see, it's basically the same thing. I just have them listed out slightly different. But most of them are actually, in this case, all of them are in the USR directory. Some of them are in local, like user local, and then some of them are in bin. All right. Now we can go have some fun, changing the shell prompt, right? So this is a fun little lab. If you don't like the way that this is formatted right here, this little section of your command prompt, you of course can change that. And I got a nice little lab in the document to show you how to change that. If you want to change your $ to like a £sign or whatever you want, you can certainly do that. But there are certain syntax to that, like \U for username. When you're studying for your practice test questions, please note these specifically. \H is for your host name, \W for working directory, and so you can see PS1 equals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then that would be the correct syntax for setting your PS1. So first, let's see what PS1 is set to. So echo $$ PS1, and let's go ahead and move this around a little bit and take a little closer look. So looks pretty foreign at first, doesn't it? Yes, no cap for echo. Correct. Cap blocks will get you. Sometimes typos get you. So you can see, there's a lot that goes into this, and the correct syntax for that, quite a mess, right? So if you want to change this, PS1 is equal to single tick /username at /home directory :/w $. Let's make a whole bunch of $signs and then single tick again. And in this case, what happened? What's the difference? Why did, when I set PS1 to something else, why did it change it completely? As you can see, what I said here is specifically here, and that's certainly quite different than what you see here. Color changed, yeah, that's definitely one. You can get pretty creative on this. I would probably leave it as, if you really want to get crazy. How to customize bash prompt. All right. Just a quick Google search on this will get you, the top 326,000 results on it. There's plenty of how-tos on this, so you can, get creative if you like. All right. Something like this, and it'll show you exactly what to type and how to set it, and then you can play around with these. All right. So you can get crazy. Right, but the same rule applies. You for username. W for capital W's for relative path. Lowercase w for absolute path. $, change of character, and things like that. So you can get pretty crazy. All right, you can change your colors of your prompt. You can all sorts of stuff. All right, so you guys can have some fun with that. All right. So that's basically the intro to customizing it. Also, the commands that we use: echo, environmental variables, export, set, and unset. So don't forget those. You also can change some of these with VI if you like. So you don't have to change them just with the shell prompt in itself. You can use an editor, but don't forget, you're gonna, don't forget, VI shortcuts here. All right, customize and use the shell environment. I want you guys to be able to set environmental variables. And the first thing we need to look at is in the Aliases profile. All right, so you could think of this as in the Windows world, we have startup and shutdown scripts, but also log in and log out scripts. Basically, the same thing applies in the Unix world. I can't help but change or compare, Windows to Linux, so hopefully that helps. But the Aliases profile, this is the equivalent of a login script. All right, so let's go look at that. And actually, I'm going to change my variable. Just because I don't like all the numbers there. So let's cat the Aliases profile. And actually, let's do this with a pipe more. And let's do this one at a time. So etc profile, it's a system-wide .profile file for the porn shell. And you can go through it. And it basically has some if, thens, and else's style programming in there. And you can see in here, basically, as soon as I log in, it does a check and basically sets the profile, you know, home, :W, $, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can go through this line by line, you know, so it does an if, then, else check as it goes through. Also, it also makes a reference to the etc login.defs file. This is another good file to cat. So let's cat the etc login.defs. Okay, and it says obsoleted. These options are no longer handled by Shadow. Shadow utilities will display a warning if they still appear, and it goes through. So in this case, the specific version of Unix that I'm using no longer uses that specific command. This is where it'd be kind of convenient to have a couple VMs open at once, and you could check this on multiple ones, but especially older Linux systems, you'll be able to go grab that file. All right. A little bit outdated. All right. So that's our etc profile. Also, you can look at ~.bash_profile. And sometimes it's easier to go search and locate for anything ~.. So if you want a list of all of the files that start with, you know, like /. On your system, you can use your find and locate utilities to go do that. But basically, you have ~profile, ~login, .profile, and then ~rc, and then here's would be your logout script. So know how to manipulate those. And specifically, this is a monumental piece in the Linux world. You may have been wondering at one point in time or another when things start with a period. The period is the equivalent of hiding a file. Definitely going to see that on your practice tests. Please note to self. All right. So in that case, go back to down here, the .bash_profile, the .bash_login script, the logout script, your RC and your profile. Basically, all of these are hidden files. All right. Now let's start looking at aliases real quick. This is pretty important for you guys to know here. So, and I always fight this in the beginning part of the course because I always want to start setting aliases right away, but I don't because I only do it when you guys are basically ready for me to do it. So let's look at setting some of these. So in this case, if I do an ls, okay, you can see that just desktop comes out. But if I do an ls-lf, you can see that the format is different. So what if every time I type ls, do I want to actually have it run in a different style? So basically, you set these aliases. So I'm going to set ls is equal to, whoops, ls-lf, and let's make the color is equal to automatic. You can probably just set it as tac color too, but we'll, let's try it as auto. There you go. Now every time I type ls, that didn't work. You can tell that this didn't work because when I typed ls, it still displayed it at the in the old format. So there's no difference basically between me doing ls. What I wanted is when I type ls, I actually wanted it displayed this way instead. So I have a typo. I have to figure out where I went wrong here. So what do you guys see differently? Where would you guys start changing your command prompt? That didn't work. Changing the color is equal to auto. All right. What can I change? Come on, work with me. What do I change?
What if you take the space away from the equal sign?
Yeah, so basically I just did every basic mistake that anyone new to the alias command is likely to do. So I just did this wrong on purpose about 6, 7, 8 times, right? So you have to preface it with the alias command. So now you see that when I type it correctly, alias is equal to ls equal to no spaces, a single tick, whatever you want your command to be. There you go. And then you can play around with that slightly, equal to auto. All right. Not really much to see there, but there, and give you an example. All right. So that's the basics of manipulating your configuration shell. There is probably an infinite number of possibilities. This is literally the basics of just manipulating the bash prompt. But that'll give you, that will certainly give you a place to start. But you can have some fun with that. You know, one thing I notice whenever I look at somebody else's Linux system or their personal system or a particular server admin logging in, every Linux person likes their environment in their own way. Some people like colors, some people don't. Some people like an ls, you know, capital F. Some people don't. So it's your chance to basically, you know, it's like in Windows when you customize your desktop. Some people like lots of icons on their desktop. Some people don't. Some people like wallpapers. Some people don't. So this is a chance for you to manipulate your environment. And I always notice whenever I touch anybody else's system, basically, you know, some people like green and black. Some people like white and black prompts. It just depends on, you know, the person. All right, so then the next piece of this is basically the GUI configuration and install and configure the X window interface, and this is going to differ depending on which desktop environment you use. An example, KDE, Gnome, XFCE, etc., etc., etc. And then in some cases, now for your tests, practice tests and things like that, you're going to need to know the old locations. But if you notice when you start digging into the X11 directory and start changing them around and trying to change this around, you'll notice that some of these are actually a little outdated now in 2014. So this is more of the traditional location of things versus probably how your operating system is likely going to do it by default. So that's kind of a problem that from an instruction standpoint I have to overcome. Simply stated, you know, these certifications are updated every 2, 3, 4, I don't know, maybe 5 years. However, how long does it take for an operating system to come out with, you know, next version? Clearly, those timelines are different, and we're at the point now where things have changed a little. Like I just showed you the the login.defs file, and you can see the latest version of Kali is already not even using that file anymore. Same thing with the Etsy X11 directory. So let's pull that over to the side here, and let's look at that. So I'm going to change directory to Etsy. All right, and then we're going to grep for X11. Actually, let's do ls. All right, and you can see I have an X11 directory here. Basically, what I just did here, just so you guys are followed along at this point, or anybody else is, I basically said list all the files in the directory, and then the output of that will go through a filter and just show me X11. All right, so you can see there is an X11 folder here. So cd X11. Let's try that again. There you go. So this would be your X11 directory, and then you can see in here, start looking in here. Now, if anybody's ever had to fight this on an older system, this is not exactly fun to fight, because what the X11 directory is basically your graphical environment. So again, you can log into a Linux operating system just using your shell. You don't have to load the GUI. If you wanted to load the GUI, you can do start X and that loads it. But if you're running Linux on an older system that may have video display problems or incompatible video card and things like that, you're going to end up fighting the X11 X Windows environment, if you will. So it's not exactly easy to fight that, because it either works or it doesn't. And you could Google for, in some cases you'll Google something right away and you'll be able to find your answer. In other cases, you'll literally, spend hours and hours and hours trying to get Linux to load on something that doesn't have the right display drivers. This is kind of, I want to point out something here, that is that the VMware application kind of lies here and gives us a very generic X Windows interface. So if you're on your host operating system, you have really, really good video cards and drivers, you're basically using that. But if I were to just do a basic install on a computer of Windows and don't load any video drivers, then install VMware Player and then run Kali, I have noticed that the conversion into the virtual world doesn't exactly work out too well, because the only drivers that VMware has to pull from are generic drivers as opposed to like a real driver. So sometimes you can have problems with the X Windows interface. All right, so we're in the X Windows or X11 directory in here. So, let's look at that. What's in here? Welcome back, Jason. All right, where's my xorg.conf file? Oops. Wrong one. All right, so doesn't see it there. Where is xorg.conf? So I did a where is. Notice what it says. What does it say? Why is it different? I just showed you the contents of both directories. What do you guys think? Here's the locate xorg.conf. Oops. What? No such file directory. All right, so there's your xorg.conf.d. So you can see these here. That's just the zip. And that's just the manual anyway. That's not going to help us. So come on, talk to me, guys. What do we do? So now you're thinking, okay, all right, fine. Let's go see what the world has to say. Where's the xorg.conf file? This is an Ubuntu reference. xorg.conf does not exist by default anymore. You can create it though. Boot to the recovery mode and select the root shell, blah, 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 blah. Copy the root xorg.conf and then specify it somewhere else. Okay, so that tells us that it may have changed. We can look at xorg configuration. In most cases, xorg is self-configuring. Those with older or unusual equipment may find it helpful to gather some hardware information before beginning configuration. This is where John, in his hardware class, if he's doing hardware on a Linux system, you can see things like monitors, sync frequencies, card chipsets, video card memories. Okay. You can do xorg tac configure so we can see if that works. Oops. Darn caps will get you every time. Okay. Oh, so there we go. Xorg configure fatal server errors. Servers are active for display 0. If this server is no longer running, remove the temp.lock file and then start again. Please consult the x.org foundation support for more sites. So that wasn't any help. That wasn't helpful at all. No xorg configure. All right, so we can keep digging. I'm going to keep digging until you guys give me an answer. So let's go back to the question. What is this xorg.conf file? What's its purpose, and how do we manipulate it? Not a lot of help there. There's xorg, right? Xorg supports several mechanisms for supplying, updating, configuration, and runtime parameters, command line options, blah, 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 blah. The list of mechanisms is ordered from the highest precedence to the lowest. That doesn't help us. Xorg uses a configuration file called xorg.conf file, and the files ending in the suffix .conf file are basically configuration. Or the xorg.conf.d for its initial setup. That was the directory we just looked at. And the server is normally started in one of these locations. So that's where your etc x11 is versus user etc x11. All right, so we saw a couple of these locations, right? Remember when we did the locate? Wow, a whole lot there if we do it like that. Let's try that again, and let's do a more. All right. So got a lot in user, got a lot in lib, got different modules, drivers. Still in module, different drivers, different chipsets, more drivers. So lots of display drivers, some extensions, multimedia, user share x server tac.org, that might be interesting, or user share xorg.configuration directory, xserver.xorg. You got video. That's the actual server that runs. I noticed that's in the bug x server directory. Got some documentation. More again, I'm just simply looking at the doc here. That's enough for me to see. So this is all documentation. Still going. Wow, lots of documentation, different libraries, different packages. So in dpackage. Okay. So different X server components are listed. Notice this is all in dpackage. All right. The bottom line here, folks, is that it's going to be different now. Traditionally speaking, you do have org.conf. These are your configuration files, but this is likely, especially now in 2014, to be different per server. Hopefully, you guys just load it, auto-detects it, runs it, no problems, and just loads, an interface for you to get into. If you're on the server side of life, typically you don't need, top-of-the-line, display drivers, so I typically don't load them on the servers. But this is more fun on the desktop side of life because, well, you might actually want good display drivers. All right. All right, so lots in there. I mean, you can see, all the different options, the different parameters. I mean, this just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. So luckily for us, we don't have to know it that well or sit there and read all of the documentation. You do need to know that this is the traditional directory, but it is likely to have changed, especially now in 2014. However, for your practice tests and things like that, please note the original, dare I say original, but traditional default directories. Also, there's things like xhost. All right. Access control enabled. Only authorized clients can connect. So we don't know what to do. So we have xhost. So we can try only unauthorized. So let's be authorized. Nope. Still doesn't work. And by the way, we're already at root, so that won't help anyway. Access control enabled. So let's try the manual for that. Server access control program for X. Please make note to self if you're taking notes. Got your your piece of paper out. Go ahead and take notes, please. X host. This is a server access control program for X, and as you saw, it said access is denied for that. The access program is used to add and delete host names. Ding, ding, ding. Please note. Or username to the list allowed to make connections to the X server. Now, the reason why I'm making a big deal about this is because you guys are going to have to get used to this. Remember, by default, Linux starts as a closed system, and if you want things to run, you have to tell them to run. Where Windows traditionally, up until recently, has really been a completely open system, and you had to spend time hardening it. So Linux is the exact opposite in that mindset. So normally what this looks like for us is a .allow or a .deny file that goes along with this. Like if we were to do IP tables, IP chains, when we start talking about cron directories or @ commands, we'll start talking about .allow and .deny files or files that end in .allow, .deny. All right, so basically what this is it's access control parameters set up. So we'd have to edit ourselves to this first in order to execute this. So by default, realistically, nobody has permissions to this. It is only sufficient for a workstation single user environment, although it does limit the worst of users. Environments which require more sophisticated measures should implement the user-based mechanism or use the hooks in the protocol for passing other authentication data to the server. Xhost accepts the following command line options as described below. Help, name. This is a given name if you want to add somebody by name. You can add plus or minus if you want to add somebody to the list. So access is granted to everyone. Or minus sign, access is restricted to only those in the list. This changes the way that file behaves altogether. It's great, basically like I like to think of the pluses in the Windows world. You would add the everyone group, where this is traditional security mindset here. Can't help but be on a CISSP. We start talking about concept of least privilege, or something called DAPE, deny all permit exceptions. That one was for you, Jason. Jason was in my CISSP class, so he remembers that stuff, and he dropped off the line. So, but basically, only if you're in that file, otherwise you're denied. So it's kind of like adding a deny on. So it adds basically access control specifically to that. You could add nothing to it. All right, and here's a reference of other files and names, and things like that. All right. All right. Also, you can see, again, if you just type in X here, the command X, that also is utility for the xorg.conf. And then one of my favorite utilities that you guys are likely to never use again, xvidtune. Now, you're going to need to know this, all right? So, warning, warning, warning. The incorrect use of this file, basically we will cut off your mouse. So here's xvidtune. Can't really make it any bigger, but you can see it's got horizontal displays, vertical displays, so horizontal on the left, vertical on the right, where it starts, where it ends, total parameters, and how you want to manipulate those parameters, and basically you can apply them, test them, restore them, and then go through the different utilities. So, quick answer, so you can get this to quick list. $1 virtual for the person who gets this correct. What is the purpose of the xvidtune utility? In your own words. Notice you can see my horizontal display is at 800 by 600. Very basic video display controls, Mark. This is about as basic as it gets, right? You know, your horizontal, your vertical, right? This is not a wild utility by any stretch of the imagination. So you just Google this and look at some images of this. Pretty much shows you the utility right then, and you can see they're pretty much, well, they're all the same. But even if you just pick an image right here, 1024 by 768, you can see how they slightly different. So you can, compare what other people have got out there if you just pulled a picture for it. Next, you can do xwinInfo and xdpyinfo. All right, so what do you think these do here? Man page for xwinInfo. xwinInfo, window information utility for X. Now, the reason why that I'm still doing this, it's not that you guys couldn't do this for yourself, but you will need to recognize the exact language of certain utilities. If I give you a practice test question and I say, which of the following is a window information utility for X, you would need to know the answer of that it's xWinInfo. xWinInfo is a utility for displaying information about windows. Various information is displayed depending on what options are selected. If no options are chosen, stats is assumed, right? So we can do that real quick and see what we get. I'm going to close out of xvidtune here. So I just type in xWinInfo. Please select a window about which you would like information by clicking the mouse in that window. And you notice I just clicked somewhere in the screen and all of a sudden I got a whole bunch of stuff. So please select, here's where we were, window information. So you can see absolute paths, different widths, visual, if it's got a border set, color map. So what is xWinInfo? What does that look like? And how is that different from xvidtune? So we do a manual for xvidtune. This is a video mode tuner, keyword tuner for xorg. Or man xWinInfo, Windows information utility for X. All right. Slightly different, folks. So now while we're at it, let's do a manual for xDPYInfo. Displays information utility for X. So wait a second. Display information utility for X. Where have I seen that? Windows information utility for X. Display information utility for X. Slightly different, aren't they? xDPYInfo is a utility for displaying information about the X server, very similar to xWinInfo. It is used to examine the capabilities of the server, the predefined values for various parameters used in communication between the clients and the server. Don't forget, xWindows is it's a client-server architecture, right? And you can see, again, everything that we're kind of in the same ballpark here. There's your xWinInfo. There's some other utilities, xDRIInfo, xVIInfo. These are other things that you can play around with. So if you want to explore your knowledge when in LPIC 1 or Linux Plus, we basically just give you the show and tell. But when you start getting into the LPCI 2, now all of a sudden you're going to be relating all of these together. So that's how much farther LPIC 2 goes than compared to 1. So I'm kind of preferencing or prefacing you guys for that course and that material. All right, secure the X server. I got some stuff on that. Start X. This is how we actually turn the display on. So you can see right here, I'm already in a graphical environment. That's because Start X is basically auto been run when I log in. Older versions of Backtrack, though, you actually have to type that. So if you start one of the old virtual machine images and it goes right to a command prompt, you might need to select Start X. And then also note, if you want to start and stop these environments, right, you got Etsy initialization.daemon and then GDM Gnome Device Manager Start and Stop. Okay, so that's how it would basically be for Gnome. But for KDE, it's going to be slightly different. This is the Gnome Display Manager. All right, so when we start comparing operating systems, this is when you're going to need to know how to, be able to identify, well, what system am I on, GNOME, KDE, XFCE, and then how are the directory paths and the directories different. And this is what we did in the previous module. So we're kind of looking at that here now. I guess for you know, in the module 5 directory, I'm kind of referencing the previous module to capitalize on what we did last module. All right. And then, of course, the major ones that are used are XDM, KDM, and GDM. Notice they all end in DM, which is Display Manager. So X, K, and G. All right. So now that's the mind map. Now let's go into the user environment. But before I do, any questions thus far? Going once, going twice. All right. And let's jump into it then. All right, so configure the shell and environmental variables in the GUI environment. Now you can see how the objectives relate to the mind maps. It basically was work the shell, work the GUI. All right. In this case, shell GUI. So I just did the overview. Now we're going to go through this module. We continue to capitalize on hands-on, and then test your heart's desire. All right. Also, some of these things, I haven't decided if I want to delete this section here or not. I want to try to give you guys a punch list for each section, so I got to think about these sections a little bit longer and what I want to do with them. All right, so you guys now have seen the different types of variables, bash variables, for example. So let's kind of do this again. But now here what we can do is a little bit more hands-on. All right, so let's look at LDD. All right, so what is LDD? Anybody know? Print shared library dependencies. Would you like some free points in your practice test, folks? You're going to need to know what the LDD command is. So print shared libraries and dependencies for basically the cat command. So let's do an LDD for bin cat. Here's the dependencies for the cat command. Okay, you can see those right here. So the bash environment variable containing a list of paths and libraries to search. For example, you can do the dependencies. This lists all the libraries and dependencies for the actual cat command. But I can do, I can change that out if I wanted to do. Let's do locate Nmap. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on, hold your horses there. Too much information. So let's clear that, and then do a pipe more. Okay, let's look at this. Where is the nmap command located? It looks like it's located in user bin nmap. So let's try that. So LDD user bin nmap. Here's all of the dependencies for the nmap command. Now, let me fast forward you guys into the future a little bit. Here, I'm basically just simply defining, here's your dependency identifier program. Notice when you guys either installed your system or when you boot your system, a whole bunch of stuff goes through the screen. And you can see all of these dependency factors getting loaded. Most people don't pay attention to the startup and shutdown and log in and log out scripts, but you can see and you can check these things actually when you're inside the environment. All right, so here's the dependencies for Nmap. You want to see what's SSL scan? Okay, here's all of the dependencies for the utility SSL scan. Okay. Now I'm kind of peeking in, all right? So the LDD user bin directory, that's traditional Linux. The fact that I did it to SSL scan, that's my pen testing 2 cents. And I'm just giving you a couple different examples to that. Next, let's go over the set command. Set pipe more. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. This ought to help you guys out. Set more. This is something I want you guys to practice. So you can see the different variables that are set, right? So bash, bin, right? Aliases, arguments, commands, color terminal, display stacks, Gnome desktop session identifiers, history file, okay? Remember when I did an echo space $ hist file? We saw this right here. Home, okay? So what this allows us to do is if you want to see what environmental variables are set on your system and what the defaults for those are, this is how you do it. Set space pipe more. Or if you want to see a specific one, all right, you can set and then grep the output of this dollars. Let's do home. If you know exactly what you're looking for, you just go to that specific one. So if I want to do, host name, all right. If I want to see what language I was on, which is kind of dumb considering I'm typing English, log name. Okay, you can see the different contents of that file. Or, hey, set, and then let's just dump the output. Let's do set pipe more, and then append those to set.txt. And then ls, or let's do less set.text. And there's another way to do it, folks. Want to see what all those parameters are? Knock yourself out. All right. So I got several. Also, notice this will be interesting. Let's do a set and then grep for hist file size. Notice Cali's default is 2000 in your history. But the default for Gnome traditionally has been only 500. For your practice test, it would be 500. You got 500 to your last commands that are saved. Okay, please note, env, to run a program in a modified environment, right? So I got some examples of that. So env tac l bin sh creates a new environment without any existing environmental variables for a new shell. You also can do some hands-on here, so we can do env. All right. Thought that was an L. Unless I got a typo. Nah. Looks like it's an I. That should be an I. Quick typo, folks. There you go. All right, so that's exactly what it was. Basically, notice if I open up a new terminal here, this gets the default settings again, but when I did the env command, I changed my existing parameters in there, so my prompt changed again. All right, so you could do where is env, and so what I'm doing when I'm doing things like this is I'm tying in several pieces of the previous utilities now with a new command. So instead of just saying, okay, here's the env command, I'm basically using them, capitalizing on the things that we've learned from the previous modules, or if there's something new, I'm adding that in. Okay, so you could do where is env, all right. spell it correctly. Actually, I'm going to change prompts again. Where is env? All right, so it's in user bin env, which you probably could have guessed that, or user share manual, that's where our manuals are, or the X11 env. Or how about print env? One word. All right. This is another very, very popular utility. So what I want you guys to do here is I want you to practice this. Anytime you go to any Linux system for the first time or somebody else's system and you want to see what they've changed, right? So you can just do a quick print env and then that'll list all, you basically can read this like a little book and it, you can see how the person has changed all of the different parameters for their environment. Also, the export command, list all exported environmental variables. So you got export, all right? And let's do an export pipe more, all right? So you can see a lot of declare statements in the beginning of this. Old path, user, roots, username, user, window IDs, paths. All right. And if you wanted to dump those to a file, you could do that. Or let's get creative. Let's say I want to export, but I want to grep that for only the declare statements. I might have went by a little too quickly. All right, so export, grep, declare, and then go ahead and do that, and then you can see that a little bit easier. You can look into that. Or if there's a specific one that you wanted to export, you can just choose the variable and the values for that. So sets all environmental variables is for the declare statement, typo, and then export whatever the variable name is. Please note the switch this is for existing, and that actually should look like that. Also, unset removes environmental variables. So let's call var equal to welcome home warriors, right? And then echo $var welcome home warriors. Unset var and then echo $var again, and there's nothing set for that. So all I did was create a variable, print it, and then undo it. How difficult is that, folks? This is where I'd like to have Mauricio in class, or Marcus. Where's Marcus when you need him? Because Marcus would tell you about the value of this from a scripting point of view. So there are times when you're doing shell scripting where you got to go ahead and set a whole bunch of things, and then you write a script specifically just to call upon things that you've already declared. Any questions? You guys are awful quiet. Make me nervous. For what, Jason? For Perl scripting, okay. But can you give me an example, or I don't know, something you did recently, or when it came in handy, or why you did it, or? Thanks, John. Like, what do you mean? Can you give just a little bit more specific? So like you're doing a log file query, and then you just set a variable to that and then just call upon that? Something basic to that? So how about we get a little creative and use that as an example? So walk me through this if this is night and day different from what you're referring to. So let's say change directory to var, change directory to log, and then less auth log. All right, so you want to look at those. All right, so let's do. Well, let's look at that specifically. Let me get a little more creative and see if I can't. So let's look at login. Okay, so root login. Okay, so let's Control C. Let's grep the authorization log for login. There's all of the last ones. Everybody agree? So let's set a variable for that. So let's call this variable who's logged in, WLI, is equal to less auth. You see where I'm going with this, Jason? Grep and then echo $WLI. Close. All right, so what I did here is I just set the, okay, so I just printed the statement. So now when I'm scripting, I could, now that I've got it stored, anytime I want to call on that, print that somewhere or send that information somewhere else, then I could clearly do that. So all I really did right here is just really set a variable for a specific command. And then you can print that command. You know, you can basically what you're doing is executing multiple commands, so when you're scripting, you create a variable. Exactly. All right, so that should give everybody else a little bit more insight as to when to use these. So thank you, Jason. Let's all right, read only. Read only lists all read only variables or sets them. So if you want, that's a quick command you can do, a variable command you can do. It's just quick read only. So that's kind of a bonus. And then we already did the printing for the variable. Let's see, changing variables. I think I've already hit that. My var, Linux is cool. I already did that. Removing variables. So I just did WLI, so I could unset that. And there it goes, ecto $WLI, and it's gone. Changing your shell prompt, right? Play around with these, get a couple examples of these. I don't really mess around with that too much. You know, you should, unless you're going to be spending a long time in your shell, and you want to make it like home. You know, go ahead and play around with these. But if you're used to going to in an enterprise world where you go from system to system to system to system, or you actually work in a data center, you typically don't bother with that too much. All right, so got a couple different examples here. Go through the different commands. I even threw in the sleep command here, but just put your computer to sleep for a period of time in seconds. Also the sleep command, you got seconds, minutes, hours, days. So basically, if you have a program that's running like an MP3 or recording program or something like that, and you want to pause it for a little bit, you can just run the sleep command. So you guys can play with that. A little bit more scripting oriented. Give priority to a shell. This is a fun one. This is the snice command. So let's do a manual for snice. Skill snice. Send a signal or report process status. So you've got skill and snice. Or kill and nice is also the popular equivalent of those. These tools are obsolete and unportable. The command syntax is poorly defined. Consider using kill all, pkill, or process kill, or pgrep commands instead. So it's specifically telling you right here that the skill and snice are a little bit outdated. Okay. So there you go. You want some examples of how to use this stuff? There you go. Here's your snice, skill, things like that. We'll be playing more around with those. But you could do snice, tax17, root, bash, and that would change your priority to that. So it still works, even though it's no longer really the convention which we use. You could change that to, right? Alright, so gave me a little more output than I wanted. So locate nice command, user bin nice. So let's compare that to snice real quick. Stop. Alright. Run a program with a modified scheduling priority. So who knows the equivalent in Windows for this? Geez a whiz. What do you guys dump into the chat? You dumped the whole log file. Why don't you just give me the command so I can pull it up? Oh, you wrote it. You wrote the script. Oh, that's what your note said. What command did you?
Hey Leo, can you hear me?
Barely. Let me turn my mic up.
Here, I took myself on mute. There's a lot of people that have worked already, so I can talk.
Okay, go ahead.
So you notice how just the very top line it says log file equals.
Everybody, if you're following along, go to your chat dialog box here, and I passed it. So we dumped all the output.
It's basically the first two lines. The first line I commented out the log file equals, and then I just changed the path to the log file and use that as my variable, so I don't have to call the path every time I'm doing a grep or a search or a set or something. I can pipe it using the variable.
I see where you're getting at.
You see what I mean? So you can set the variable in your script to a path. You can set it to a value, and in this case,
you just call the log file.
Correct. In this particular one, I'm calling the log file, so I'm grepping it or I'm setting it based off of the path location, and then in the rest of the scripting, I can call it based on just log file instead of giving it the whole path.
Exactly.
So I know we passed it already, but I just figured I'd try to pull an example from one of my scripts.
No, that's a very common one. So what he did is, because I don't think you guys can actually see mine, so I'll just type it. It's not exactly going to be the same, but he wrote log file is equal to tilde batch var sys logs lan wan, and then echo $log file. There you go. Now, of course, whatever the exact location would be for that, if that's the log file that you're working with. So if you want to review log files for the day, all you need to do is just, reference the variable.
Right, and if I'm doing multiple log files, I can do log file 1, give a path to a date, and then log file 2 could be a path to another date. So basically what that script did was it brought in the log files, I'm calling it, and then I'm looking for certain information. I'm basically cutting it, extrapolating it, and then I'm going to make HTML out of it. I'm going to create a report out of the log file. So it was basically a request from one of our engineers to look at some data, and I needed to parse it out of the logs that were from the LAN WAN. So that's an example of using a variable when scripting. You can do it on the fly like you did, but then you're doing multiple commands one after the other on the command line.
I would even raise you slightly on that. We did something slightly different in a place that I worked, where basically we had to look at log files daily. And so we created a script, and it basically, that script prompted for the user input to enter a date. When the user entered in the input into the script, then it set the variable. So basically, you say, run the script, check log files. Then you got prompted to enter in, 03/07/2014 in the correct date format. That input that you just entered gets set into a variable, and then it'll go grab those log files for that day, all those log entries for that day. So it was a real easy way basically to just, run the same script every single day, except, what the user was prompted for was, basically enter in the date you want to check. Yeah, these were all.
We took this similar to what you did, but we took the script. I was just gonna say that we just ended up taking the script and creating a cron job out of it, so it runs nightly, and then the user just clicks on a URL. It takes them to the page, and they can browse all the dates from there.
Oh, well, you just re-raised me. All right, so basically what I just said. So now you're having the computer do the work for you, so you don't have to do it. So the script automatically runs, and then it'll take that data and then put it somewhere, and then you just have that automatically run, let's say every day at midnight, for example, and it'll take all the logs for that day and then put them somewhere, and then you can just go to that location or URL.
Correct, and it's just a little simple URL with HTML in it, so the end user's happy. They get what they want out of it. It's not anything professional. It's just something quick and dirty. But it's a batch file that runs, or I should say a cron job in this case, because it's a BSD box, and it just runs nightly, and the user can click on a URL and it's updated.
Yeah, here's your re-raise of the re-raise, is that for those log files, you remember in the CISSP class we talked about integrity. So you could run like an MD5 sum or an MD5 check or something like FCIV, and then basically hash all of your log files every single day and then just store those hashes somewhere. Or encrypt them, or archive them, or send them to like some other log server or something like that, and you basically can just run these scripts all the time. This is why I really like having you guys participate in this, because I can only speak so far as to my experience or what I've done, but when I get 2 or 3 people to chime in and then say, oh, well, that's cool, well, here's what I did, and oh, we did something very similar to that, right? And it just the conversation then in turn snowballs, and then you get really, really good context for how do you actually use and apply this stuff in the real world. And Jason's dead on right there. I mean, this is all stuff that we get tasked to do at work, to say the least.
Yeah,
all right, good.
One-off stuff like this. It's not even.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's basically just one-off stuff. It's a user's request for something, and we try to figure out how to make it easy. So that's just an example of like a one-off.
Yeah, I mean, if you can script or automate something, I mean, I'm a big fan of that, especially if you can make your scripts more specific than generic. Like, for example, run a script that looks just for a specific date as opposed to like all dates or something like that. Because like we were like what we're doing in here is we're learning commands like. All right, so I don't know. CD var log, and then look in the login directory for who's logged in, either successes or failures or something like that. So it's a very, very basic combination command here. But when you start getting into the real world applied scenario, now you have to purpose this, and you actually have to do something with it and make it function or make somebody else's life easier, because you're always going to have that one person that comes up to you and says, hey, I wish, so-and-so did ABC 1, 2, 3, and you're going, okay, well, yeah, we can actually make that happen for you, and then you end up tweaking these scripts and things like that. So you can certainly get more crazy with this as you get quote, air fingers quote, applied and air fingers quote. But you know, that's what you end up doing at work. All right. Let's see. So we look at Etsy profile. Let's do that's not what I wanted. Let's try a little bit more specific. Not too long. Yeah, let's do probably still too long. That's not too long. All right, so what I did is a locate.bash, and so you can see, .bash rc. That's actually wrong because that's bash.bash rc. Here's your .bash rc. So that's actually in the skeleton directory. So give me my mouse. So this equivalent right here, bash rc, and then there's a couple of them here. So .bash rc original in the root, user share, and then all of these are just documents, and that's not really going to help. Or actually, there's a Kali defaults one as well. So what I did is locate.bash, locate.profile, locate.bash _ logout, right? And so you can go through these. So what I would suggest is locate space dot, and then go through each one of those and then check out the different directories and structures and see what's in these. Because if you want to see, your login scripts, your log out scripts, you're going to need to be able to check those. We've already done the alias command. You guys should be good there. And then I have a little bit more advanced documentation here for the GUIs, the Etsy X11, the KDE, where they are in SUSE, Debian, Red Hat, Gentoo, and things like that. Some of the different parameters, things that you'll need, maximum resolution supported for the video card, horizontal syncs, vertical syncs, how to identify a chipset, color depths, all the different combination. Notice that the two colors, 256, 65, etc. I gave you some X window terminology, how to do, dual and multi-head monitors, and the different settings for that if you want to clone something or combine desktops, just screen resolutions, how to use Xhost, all right, how to use xvidtune. We already looked at xwinInfo, xdpy info. We talked about startx. Here's information on how to locate that stuff. And then specifics for KDE, Gnome, and I don't have XFCE here, but I do have the just the KDE and the Gnome. So you can go through, you can see some of the popular directories and things like that. Otherwise, we can take a quick tour and do video settings via the GUI, mouse settings via the GUI, and keyboard settings via the GUI. Not that you guys will spend too much time in here, but basically go to your accessories. It is helpful to know that these exist in case you actually do need to change them. But go through there, all right? There's a couple of ways that you could do this. You can go into, where am I? System tools, preferences, system settings. Give it a second to load. Still starting. There we go. All right, so if you want to play with video, there's your details. Mouse, there's mouse and touchpad settings. Whoops. Oh, that was dumb. I got to open it back up. System tools. Hopefully it loads a little faster. Yeah. Keyboard. There's your keyboard settings. All right. So basically, it's just a quick tour here. So if I do video, let's see your details of this. This is not really helpful. Actually, that's not what I wanted. Actually, at all. It's display. Here's a little bit on colors. If you want colors. There's really not much to do here. Here's a generic display, so if I want to change it from 1024 to 768, you can go ahead and apply that. Give me a different window size here. Notice my VMware got bigger, or the VMware player window got a little bigger here. All right, so that's the display. Detect displays if you want. You can go back to your windows here. So not really much in this display. Now you can find others if you search for them. Adjust Linux display tools. So I'm doing a quick Google search here for Adjust Linux display tools. And there's a couple different utilities, so here, here's, xorg configure, sys install, depackage. Basically, that's reinstalling your X server. All right, so you can get lists of these things and additional utilities. So it's not just limited to what's in this course, is my point. So that was video. Next, let's do mouse. I shouldn't have closed that. I got to stop doing that. One trick you'll have fun with is to figure out how to do this on different systems. So this is, again, good to go, play with somebody. You really want to have some fun. Change the right-handed and left-handed clicks. That's always fun to do to people. Show the pointer when the control key is pressed. So if you want the sonar effect, you can do that. I hate it. You can, change accelerations if you want, sensitivity, drag and drop, double-click timeouts. This is another, what we would call accessibility option. If you want long periods between double clicks, you can certainly do that. And then what's that, mouse, and then keyboard. Here are your keyboard settings. So you can, change shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts. This is definitely fun to do. All right. You want to, take a screenshot, play a sound, try to go through this is really, really good review of all of the keyboard shortcuts. Like, for example, Alt F4. That is one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts for closing a window. Or like, how do you right-click? It is normally Shift F10 for right-clicking. So let's see if that works. Shift F10. It is a Windows anyway. We could set it though. All right. Or custom shortcuts, and you can specify what they want to do. Just go through the little add wizard here, name, and then the command. All right. So that brings us basically to the end of today. All right. All right, any questions? This is basically a quick blitz on, what we call the user environment. Logging into the system and then, getting acclimated with a little bit more of the Linux-friendly tools and utilities. So quick, let's do a question review, and then we're going to call it a night. Don't make me do a good, bad, and opportunity. We'll go person by person. All right, let's verbally do it. In the chat dialog box, let's list one thing that you like about what we've done so far. Everybody, give me a quick chat as we summarize here. Okay, good messaging. Like the mind maps and how they map to the study guides. The only thing that I asked, John, you can use them all you want. Hang on. Excuse me. Before you give them out or distribute them to the world, let me give you a copy with my website on them because these are generic and blank. So you can do whatever you want with them. You can give them out to the whole world. Just I'd ask that you hold on to that because once I really just gave these for you guys to have here and now. But if I had some branding on them, then I would actually encourage you to give them to everybody in the world. But let me get my branding on it first, please. But yeah, you're more than welcome to use that. All right, let's list the bad stuff. You guys have had enough classes now. Let's list anything bad, anything that you don't like. And you can always email me in person if you like. If there's nothing you want to share here, if there's something, a deal breaker somewhere, don't make me cry. But, if there's anything that I can make your life easier on real quick, please let me know. How can I make your lives easier? Well, you say it's a bad night, but guess what? You're here. So this might be more of a Wednesday, Friday for you, John. Yeah, again, we're doing this synchronously and asynchronously. Synchronously for the purpose of the schedule, and then asynchronously, to get you guys where you need. But to be quite honest, I was reading the Katami. It's sleeting outside. Here it is, April, and it's now sleeting. Great. Video reviews. Are you guys able to use the videos and watch them asynchronously and go through them and pause them and start them again? Is that helpful? You get to see the exact syntax and. All right. Well, I want to leave it open. You guys are, more than, in terms of the norms of things, what I'm not seeing is we're a little less on the participation side than probably average, and it could be just, a web conferencing thing. I just want to make sure that I'm giving you guys, more than anything and everything that you possibly need. So you guys got to let me know if there's something I can do. I mean, my office door is open, but you guys got to tell me how to help you. So let's leave that communication line open. All right, any opportunities? How can I make this the best class ever? So if I don't get any opportunities, that means right now this is the absolute best class you've ever been in. Oh, I'm gonna take the exam for you, Gabe. Yeah, you notice, Gabe, this is you got to get acclimated to your environment. So it's like going through this material once is like a holy moly moment, and then when the second time that you go through it, it's probably a little easier to digest. Does anybody agree or disagree with that? Chris? Yeah. Well, Gabe, that's also why I switched over to this software. You notice we were doing the what the heck was it? What was the last software we were using? Shoot, I have an account on it too, and I can't remember the name of it. Not GoToMeeting, it's Adobe Connect. Here I get more control over the different resources, and I get to do. It's a little easier to do what I want with them. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to be adding a video folder to the Dropbox link and upload all of our videos, and that's going to be the new place for all of the videos. Probably either this module or the next module after that. No, yeah. I'm going to put probably a third of this course on YouTube, maybe 25%, 30% of it. I want to leave enough out there on YouTube as a teaser, but again, this is my livelihood, so I can't. If I gave away every course, well, then I guess I'd put myself out of a job. So I got to give just enough of a teaser out there for the world. Yeah, exactly, to drive people to my course, and so any other questions, guys? I'm going to stop the recording.